you watch a specific type of video or creator or, a certain interest on YouTube, the more likely these things are to be recommended to you because YouTube wants to keep you on the platform for as long as possible. They want you to watch more videos, watch more ads, possibly spend money on the platform through memberships and whatnot. This is how recommendations on YouTube work. So, for instance, if you watch a lot of my content, you're going to get more and more recommendations for content like mine and for my content in specific. That is because there are no requirements that I need to meet really in order to basically pass the validation check other than, hey, do people watch his videos? Have they subscribed? Do they leave a like? Have they commented? Things like that. These are all inputs that are used to help recommend content to you that is more personalized so that you enjoy using YouTube more.
Yes, I again would agree with you 100% right now, because that does seem something that's, I think would meet the, requirements somewhat.
This system would be severely threatened by Bill C-11 because obviously Canadian creators that meet the CanCon requirements are more likely to be basically recommended to Canadian viewers, regardless if their content actually meets the requirements that YouTube would have actually had in place to actually recommend that content in the first place. So let's say you like Some Ordinary Gamers, Mutahar, who is a Canadian creator, right? And you watch a lot of his content, you watch his videos very often. Well, hypothetically, if he doesn't meet CanCon requirements or anything, you could end up seeing less of his videos in your recommended or even in other areas of YouTube that they use to recommend, so like your watch nexts and stuff like that, simply because he doesn't meet these requirements. Now, of course, it doesn't keep in mind whether or not you care about these requirements or you care about this stuff. It doesn't really keep that in mind. It could be disastrous for creators for this specific reason, okay? Let's say that this was passed into law and whatnot, and the recommendations on YouTube were changed for Canadian viewers. And they start to get recommended more Canadian content regardless if it actually interests them or not, simply because it's Canadian. They click on it or whatever, and they don't actually like the video that they end up watching. They click off of it early. That could severely impact the watch time, the click-through rates, all kinds of different things that are absolutely vital to getting people's content recommended on a global scale.
Yes, now, I would like to ask one question, Optimus. So, this law would, actually, how do I say this? Yeah, this law would give the creator, or would recommend the Canadian content or Canadian videos to other Canadian viewers, but here's the thing. Does it just have to be Canada? What about other states in the country? What about other countries? Foreign countries? What about, I'm not sure if counties would typically count, but I would think that counties and countries in the United States and foreign countries would count, but I don't really know. I'll make you make the judge call on that one.
For instance, not all of my viewers are in the United States, and only a couple percent, pretty much, of my viewership is in Canada. But if your click-through rate and all these other elements that go into your recommendations and whatnot on YouTube are negatively impacted by a law like this, it could have widespread impacts on Canadian creators that are actually negative. So independent creators who don't meet the CanCon requirements and whatnot could see a massive drop-off in their analytics, which could actually end up negatively impacting their channel altogether. And all in the guise of them being being Canadian. So one of the things that's being hyped up about Bill C-11 is that it'll level the playing field between these streaming companies and these legacy broadcasting companies and individual creators, which it absolutely won't. Legacy media companies are already favored by the CanCon requirements, and there is no specific language in this bill that provides any sort of protection for individual content creators or small-time people, which is another massive issue with this law in the first place, is where it actually counts when it comes to protecting individual creators and people on a more small-time place. There's really no language that protects them from being negatively impacted by not being in the CanCon requirements. There is no new set of CanCon requirements for online content creators. It more or less skews everything back in favor of these legacy media companies that, by the way, are already dying out. These are companies that are getting beat by YouTube, that are getting beat by individual content creators like myself, and they're clawing back to relevancy however they can. And this is...
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, state to state, county to county, country to country, foreign country to foreign country. You get the point, right? No?
Is one of the latest attempts for them to crawl back into, these legacy media companies to crawl back into position to actually compete, basically protecting out these companies that are just being outcompeted in a way. And with these vague definitions and these lack of definitions that really need to be put into something like this, we're basically getting to a point where it doesn't very well define some of the most important categories of creators that it's really trying to regulate. For instance, the bill doesn't explicitly exclude all user-uploaded content for social media platforms, which content creators obviously fit that definition, right? I create user-uploaded content. Your favorite Canadian creators create user-uploaded content for the internet and whatnot, for social media platforms and whatnot. They are not specifically protected in this bill, and that is a problem because with the bill already skewing things in favor of these legacy media companies, there needs to be some protections put in place for creators and for the ecosystem that the internet has created. Now,
Yes, I completely agree with you on this. Now, I'm not agreeing with you on everything on all the videos you upload, but just some things in this video. And yes, it would be a real problem for people and anything else. So, yeah, someone really needs to fix that or get that fixed.
you might be wondering, well, Optimus, why exactly is this happening? If it's such a bad idea, why is this going down in the first place? Well, the real reason why, and this is, of course, my personal opinion, but I think it can really be kind of backed up by multiple other instances of this happening, even like here in the United States. Most lawmakers are old heads, okay? Just to put it very simply, you know, they didn't grow up with the internet. They were probably in their 30s or 40s by the time that computers really got put out on a mass scale, the internet really started to take off and everything. So they don't really understand the internet in the first place, and of course, being in the position to create laws and pass these kinds of regulations, essentially they're regulating something that they have not a very good understanding of. And these legacy media companies are absolutely loving it because at the same time that they can try to influence these people that don't really know enough to make these kinds of laws in the first place, it's giving them an increased chance and relevancy to fight against online content creation in a way that could have widespread impact, right? So while we're...
Yeah, I could see that happening. I could really see that happening, and fighting online creator content or creation, whatever you called it, yeah, that seems to be a problem that needs to be fixed.
We're common internet users and we can see the issues with this. These old people either don't see the issues with it because they don't use the internet enough and don't really understand the culture of the internet, or they're blatantly ignoring these problems basically for profit, which is exactly what these legacy media companies are looking for in the first place. They're trying to make money from this. This isn't about leveling a playing field. There is no unfair playing field. They're simply being outcompeted by platforms like YouTube, and they're trying to do whatever they can to claw back. So,
yeah, well, lots of people are doing things legally and illegally for money.
So at this point, any type of requirements like this that alter the algorithm of these platforms, it either needs to be opt-in or it needs to be dropped. You basically should be able to choose whether or not you have to follow these regulations because it could have such a widespread impact, right?
Yeah, I think the requirements for, people in Canada should be dropped because Optimus, let's face it, if the if Canada's content creators are going through these, requirements that they have to meet and they're struggling with it and they can't meet these requirements, well, one, they're pretty much fucked. As in, if they can't meet these requirements, life as we know it is a living hell. So yeah, I think these requirements should be dropped and something should be, fixed. If you get what I'm saying.
I mean, in essence, we're talking about these laws artificially impacting the algorithm of places like YouTube to skew results potentially in favor of larger Canadian media companies. And for content creators and people and overall just content that you already don't really want to see, which is going to make the user experience on YouTube worse and the content creator experience for Canadians worse. If they're going to add these types of requirements, it needs to be an opt-in thing and not just random enforcement by a government body that harms smaller creators. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a bill that could have widespread global impact even if it is a Canadian bill. I mean, the audience of YouTube creators is a global thing, right? Like I said earlier in the video, it's not like just people from the United States watch Optimus content. There's people from everywhere in the world, and the same applies for Canadian creators. So